Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Radney Crawford. After a couple weeks off, we are back and going to be going over Sunday's race at the Indy Road Course, where Michael McDowell got career win number 2, locking himself into this year's playoffs. We'll also look at how the playoff standings are shaping up as the pressure is building, and we look at Friday night's truck race, the first for their playoffs, who came out the winner there, and look ahead to Sunday's race at Watkins Glen. So let's get started. So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. If you are looking to upgrade or update your hunting apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go. They have a wide selection of shirt designs for many types of hunting as well as fishing, and right now they are having a sale on their long sleeve shirts. So if you're looking to get a head start on your winter collection, then hunttoharvest.com has what you need. They also have some brand new hat designs in, and they are going fast. So head over to hunttoharvest.com and get your order in before it's too late. And when you go to check out, be sure to use the promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY18923 for even more savings at checkout. And this can all be done at hunttoharvest.com. So on Sunday, Michael McDowell gets his second career win at Indianapolis, dominating, leading 54 laps of 82 laps run. Michael also won stage 1, so that's 6 playoff points now in his pocket. And this was the biggest win of Michael's career. He does have a Daytona 500 victory, but comparing that to Sunday's win at Daytona, he was in the right place at the right time. This time at Indy, it was just complete domination. He wound up leading the final 30 laps. And with this win, Michael went from being in the thick of a points battle for the final playoff spot with Bubba Wallace, Daniel Suarez, to now locking himself in the playoffs. And looking at the final 2 races of this regular season, you got Watkins Glen and Daytona. Michael has a very good chance to go out and get even more playoff points, whether it be with stage wins or coming away with another race win, which isn't out of the question completely. He's strong at road courses. We just saw Sunday. This isn't some new development for Michael's career, and he's always been strong at super speedways. Like I said, he has that Daytona 500 win in his pocket. He knows how to get up front and stay up front at these super speedway races. So it's going to be very important if he gets these opportunities to get more playoff points to help himself get further along in the playoffs. That is going to be the goal for sure. And Sunday's performance, it to me just shows the growth of Front Row Motorsports that this team has done ever since bringing Michael McDowell into the fold in 2018. The most top 10s that Front Row Motorsports had in a season was 3 top 10s with David Reagan in 2017, the year before Michael joined. And once Michael came in, you started seeing a slow build up to the point where we're at today. And it really started kicking off in 2020. That year, Michael had 4 top 10s, which was a new high for Front Row Motorsports. The next year, he goes out, gets that Daytona 500 win, 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s. Last year, he had 2 top 5s, but a high 12 top 10s for the team. And this year so far, he has the 1 win on Sunday, 2 top 5s, and 6 top 10s. So Michael has definitely brought a whole new level of consistency for the team. And interesting enough, this team just this past week announced that they picked up the option for both Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland in 2024, which is huge news for both drivers. When you had a driver like Zane Smith, kind of in the wings waiting, nobody was real sure which direction Front Row was going to go. Now Zane Smith, who is really one of the top young talents coming up through the sport, Zane, they said, is free to look for other rides, for full-time cup rides, but they do have an offer on the table for a full-time truck return and select starts in other series. And on the surface, I even tweeted this out, that I was expecting it to be a Zane Smith, Todd Gilliland 2024 lineup, but it was a difficult decision Front Row's in, which is in a way a good thing that you have this much talent, that something you haven't had really in your time in the sport. Michael McDowell, it's not a slam towards him that I thought he would be the one out the door. I figured he'd be the one to go to the 10 car if Eric Almirola retires. But just keeping an eye further down the road in the future, I feel like Zane and Todd Gilliland were the best ones to go with. McDowell still brings a lot to the table. It's not like he's lacking in production. So either way, it's a win for the team. It'll be interesting to see where Zane Smith goes for 2024. And looking at this race overall, with no stage breaks, now at these road courses, this race was done in just over 2 hours. And this was just your classic old school road course race where it came down to hitting the line, not missing anything going in and out of the corners, your pit crew having to step up and pretty much not mess up in any of the pit stops and the final pit stops, which we saw with Daniel Suarez. And I was really glad to not see a late caution in this race. You felt like it was coming, and that would completely erase Michael McDowell's lead over Chase Elliott. AJ Allmendinger went off track right there towards the end, was able to get it through the sand trap, get back on the access road, and keep it going. And luckily, NASCAR wasn't quick on the button for the caution flag on that one. And it was nice just to see a race play out with strategy. Nothing, no crazy finishes, no crazy late restarts. I don't have to have a restart every road course or every race in that matter with 10 or less to go, or a green-white checkered to make it an entertaining ending. If anything, some of those finishes, they can make it even a joke of some of these race finishes, especially at a track like the Indy road course where you have that tight turn one where you know somebody was going to take it as deep as they could and just cause mayhem. So glad to see NASCAR not throw a late caution, like I said, especially with AJ, and this race just play out organically like it should. Now you had Chase Elliott finish in second, and with his performance at this race, to me, it makes him the favorite at Watkins Glen. Obviously, there are other drivers that he is going to have to contend with, but with the speed he showed Sunday, Watkins Glen being probably the best track for him on the schedule, he's got a couple wins there. In the last 5 races, he has 4 top 5s and 4 top 10s. So he knows how to get around that track, and he definitely knows how to win at. I think Chase is going to be the guy to keep an eye on and the favorite going into Sunday's race at Watkins Glen. But you also had Daniel Suarez finish in third. Could have contended for this win if not for the mistake on pit road by his pit crew. And again, it was all about stepping up to the plate and not missing. And unfortunately, this team just slipped, had the hose get stuck up under the front of the car when they were changing the left side tires, ready to go around to the right. And that cost Daniel Suarez quite a bit of time. And I think if he'd had a clean pit stop, we could have had a 3-way battle for this win. I think if you had Suarez up there battling with Michael McDowell, that would give Chase Elliott opportunity to get up there and compete for it. But it didn't work out this way, probably much to Michael McDowell's delight. But sticking with Suarez and Chase Elliott for just a second, there was an incident where you had Suarez, and this was just before the pit stop, Suarez running in third behind Chase. It was apparent that Chase was struggling with the handling of his car. The handling had gone away. Like I said, it's right there before pit stops. And Suarez was all over Chase. Had the better car, but Suarez was being pretty patient about it. He went into a couple corners where he could have pressed the issue and dove down under Chase or knocked him out of the way, but he didn't do it. He didn't push the issue, probably to save his own race, to keep from getting himself in a mess. And I'm sure he didn't want to wreck Chase. He didn't want to take away Chase's chances that way. And coming around towards back to the start finish line on one of the last corners, Suarez had his opportunity and he bumped Chase going into the corner, knocking him out of the way. And next thing you know, you had Jeff Burton on the broadcast talking about that was a little excessive, didn't think that was called for. And NASCAR sending out a video of the incident itself seemed to be making a big deal out of nothing. And I just didn't get where it was coming from, especially for Jeff Burton to act like it was such a big deal. To me, it was racing. I even sent out, when NASCAR did the video, I replied to it. I don't see really what the issue is here. Chase was struggling with handling. Suarez had plenty of opportunities before this to knock him out of the way, but held up. It's not like Suarez had just caught him and took him out. And that's exactly the thing. We were acting like Suarez caught Chase, had no patience, and was trying to just wreck him out of the race, when that wasn't the case. When Suarez had been patient behind him for over a lap and finally got his opportunity and took the shot, didn't wreck Chase, just did what he needed to do to move him. That's racing. Don't understand what the issue is with that move. And of course, the big headline for this weekend's race at Indy was the return of SVG, along with some other foreign drivers, most notably Brody Kostecki, who competes against Shane in the Supercar Series. And Shane comes out, gets another top 10 finish, finishes in 10th place. And this is after he was able to lead a lap or two through the pit cycle. And he stayed in that 8th to 12th area in the race for most of the day. So a consistent day for Shane. As for Brody Kostecki, he finishes 22nd, but that finish doesn't really tell the whole story for his race. He didn't really have any practice time, any time on the track like the others. He had a lot of speed. He was able to qualify in 11th place before wrecking his car in qualifying. That's put him behind the 8 ball. And before he wound up finishing in 22nd, he was running up near the top 15. So it was going to set up to be a pretty decent debut for Brody. But unfortunately, they did some different pit strategy, just trying to throw a Hail Mary in case something crazy happened. And it just didn't work out that way. Hopefully, we see Brody back in this series, back in the NASCAR sometime in the near future. I feel like he could be another foreign driver to really enjoy sitting back and watching. And if you got Shane Van Gisbergen in the NASCAR, whether it's the Cup, Xfinity, Truck, or a combination of the three next year, that could be a fun little, don't want to call it rivalry, but battle whenever he gets behind the wheel. And for Bubba Wallace, the pressure is officially on now. He was probably already feeling a little pressure not having a win, but he had a pretty good gap between himself and the playoff cutoff line. Now with McDowell's win, that knocks one driver out on points, puts Bubba Wallace in the final spot, just 28 points above the cut line. And Bubba, he's admitted it himself. He's not the strongest on road courses. That's very well known. Daytona, obviously a very strong track for Bubba, but with McDowell's win, it's definitely going to make Bubba feel some stress over these next couple of weeks. At Watkins Glen, he's definitely going to be pulling for a guy who's already won this year, no matter who it is, to get that race win or be able to go out and get it himself. He doesn't want to go into Daytona in a must-win situation just because Daytona, it could go wrong really quick. You could be going for the win, trying to get yourself in the playoffs, and a big crash happen, and your hopes are over. So Bubba didn't really do anything wrong in the Indy race. He maintained. He got a good, solid finish. He kept himself clean in the race. Just unfortunately, the top three finishers were people below the cut line. So on Friday night, we had the Truck Series kick off their playoffs at IRP, where Ty Majeski gets the race win, officially moving himself on to the next round. And looking at the cut line, it's a pretty tight battle there. You have Matt Crafton, who finished the race in 9th. He is 2 points below the cut line. And Matt DiBenedetto, who finished 10th. He is 3 points below the cut line. And this series will not race again until the Milwaukee Mile next weekend. So these guys, they got a little time to think about it. Probably a little bit too much time for some of their liking, but some time to focus on Milwaukee Mile and what they need to do. Matt Crafton, Matt DiBenedetto, they really, again, kind of like Bubba, didn't do anything wrong in the race. They ran the race they needed to and kept it clean, got top 10s, and stay within striking distance on the points. But looking at some pretty good finishers in the race, you had Lane Riggs. He finished in 3rd. William Sawalich came away with a 6th-place finish. And Rajah Caruth, he gets a solid 7th-place finish. And then you had Shane Van Gisbergen making his NASCAR Oval debut in the Truck Series at IRP. He finishes in 19th place. He was running up around the top 15 towards the end of the race, but ultimately fell to 19th. Still a solid top 20 finish for Shane in his first Oval try in NASCAR. And Shane seemed to have a lot of fun at this race. He really enjoyed himself and just kind of took in the experience and took away what he could. And this announcement that Shane was going to be in this race was coming off the heels of rumors heating up about his plans for 2024. It looks like his team has named his replacement for 2024 in his supercar team. And the big rumor right now is that Trackhouse is trying to sign him to have him race across all 3 series in multiple races, not really wanting to throw him completely to the line jet of the Cup Series. But one has to ask, with the next gen car, would it be better to go ahead and put Shane in the Cup Series instead of having him, dip a toe in every other series? Ultimately, Justin Marks, I think you can confidently say he knows what he's doing. He's not wanting to bring Shane up too quick and possibly throw off his confidence, I'm sure. And look, Shane will bring a lot of attention no matter what he gets in, whether it's the trucks, the Xfinity, or the Cup Series. So it'll be really interesting to see what Shane's plans are for 2024 when it comes to NASCAR. And looking ahead to this weekend's race at Watkins Glen for the Cup Series, as I said earlier, Chase Elliott is the favorite for this race, I believe, just with the success he's had throughout his career at Watkins Glen, with all the wins, the top 5s, the top 10s, the speed he showed this past weekend at the Indy Road Course. It just seems to be setting up for a Chase Elliott win to lock himself in the playoffs right here at the last minute after what's been a crazy 2023 season for him. But that doesn't mean he's the only one you should watch out for. There are plenty of other drivers that around him that are very strong on road courses, and some of them are below the cut line, like AJ Allmendinger, who had a pretty miserable day at the Indy road course. Watkins Glen is where he got his first career win. He's always been strong there, just like Chase. So AJ is going to be someone to keep an eye on, because this is really probably his last best shot to get that win to lock himself in the playoffs. Also, Daniel Suarez, who, as we said, was very strong at the Indy road course, and he's been solid at Watkins Glen as well. Trackhouse is trying to get that 99 car into the playoffs. Also, I'm seeing a lot of people say keep an eye out on Alex Bowman. They got a feeling that he's going to come into this race very strong. He could be someone to get not really an upset win, but shock a lot of people with a win at Watkins Glen, and he be the one to leapfrog over Chase Elliott and Bubba Wallace and get in the playoffs. Some drivers that are already locked in the playoffs that I think are going to be the strongest competition for Chase. You got Martin Truex Jr., who I think, it was always there for a few years. It seemed to be Chase Elliott versus Martin Truex Jr., who was going to finish first and second. Martin is kind of back to his winning form, championship form this season. I think Martin is going to have a lot of confidence going into this race, and he probably looks at it as this is his last best chance to get another win, to get even more playoff points. Then you have Chase's teammate, Kyle Larson. He is the defending winner of this race. Kyle has been very strong on road courses, and Rick Hendrick, as a team overall, has been. They're going for their 5th win in a row here at Watkins Glen. Also, Tyler Reddick is another driver. That's probably going to be who Bubba Wallace is pulling for the most. I know he's going to pull for anyone above that cut line, but if his teammate can get up there and be the one to get the victory, get more playoff points, get a little bit of momentum headed their way as they go to this final stretch before the playoffs, Tyler Reddick is going to be a guy to keep an eye on. And if a new driver does win, that puts Bubba Wallace in a must-win situation at Daytona. A good track for Bubba, but not necessarily the race you want to go into in a must-win scenario. I mean, there's just so much that could happen there and could ruin your race in an instant. If, like I said, if a new winner happens, that's going to put Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski in the pressure cooker. Both those guys will be in the last 2 spots on points, just 2 points separating them. So if we go to Daytona and we have a wild card winner, who's going to get the spot? Kevin Harvick in his last season, or Brad Keselowski, where RFK is on an upswing and really showing a lot of improvement this year? I hope it doesn't come to that, because I would like to see both those drivers in it. This is the one downside of this new playoff, where winning you're in is it can take away from a driver's season-long performance up to this point. We seen it last year with the battle between Martin Truex Jr. and Ryan Blaney on who would get the final spot, and both those guys, if I remember right, were in the top 5 in points, and one of them was going to get kicked out of the playoffs after Daytona. And it would be the same thing here. I believe both Harvick and Keselowski, they're right there in the top 10 of points, and I think it would just be a shame if one of their playoff hopes ended because of some Hail Mary move that gets a driver a win and into the playoffs that probably, the way it seems to work out, doesn't really even have a chance to get the championship. And that'll wrap up today's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank y'all for joining me and listening along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast from. You can also click on the link in the description below to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button over there so you know when our new videos drop, including our weekly fantasy pick shorts. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will meet back same time next week and go over all the action from Watkins Glen.